So, hi everybody, good afternoon, and now finally let me present my little personal project, the website of Modern Győr, which presents the architecture of the city of Győr from the 1918 to 1990. First of all, I will tell you something about why I started. Then I will show you the web page itself, and finally I will present you some results and cooperations beyond the project. As a student of the Budapest University of Technology, I have made a research in 2011. The theme of the project was the online presentation of the modern architecture of Győr, a county seat in Hungary, a regional center. My initial thought was that the same question that we are discussing right now, that the conversations, judgments and opinions of the architecture of the 20th century are rather superficial, and not only among the people but also among the architects, despite the fact that the overwhelming part of our cities was built in this era. I think the problem is not actually that the modern architecture of these cities is completely unprocessed, but the researches and publications are not widely available and not easy to understand for everybody. Because of this, these buildings need to be processed and presented, available for everyone. A good way of it, for example, is an online presentation, a thematic website. Therefore, I started my work 4 years ago based on that assumption that a modern architectural era of a Hungarian regional center could be processed on a thematic website. You know, Hungary has a big capital, Budapest, in the center of the country, and a lot of regional centers, about 100 or 200,000 inhabitants, and that was my assumption that about 100 or 150 relevant buildings in these cities could be processed completely on a website. And I have chosen Győr. It's very simply why, because it's originally my hometown, and so the most of the contacts and knowledges I have about this city. In the 20th century, became Győr more and more to a central role, and it is reflected too in his architecture as well. And I was interested in seeing how the new modern architecture started to appear in the city. The new language of design, the new urbanism principles, new materials and structures. Therefore, as the starting point of my work, I choose the period after the World War I. I defined the end of the era in 1990. It doesn't require much explanation. So let me show you the website itself. As you can see, the buildings appears as blog posts. Until now, 90 buildings are presented, 95 from 90 architects. And I will show you first the bibliography. Because, of course, the presentation is based on research, mostly from printed documents, and I tried to make a list all of these sources on the website, and, if possible, to make available by digitization the document to all of the visitors. The red ones are scanned, and you can see it. These are basically articles from magazines, 100 and almost 200, and naturally there are books and other documents too. That was the point, that all is reachable for everyone. The local state planning institute, a győri tervezővállalat, has had several publications from their own work, partly for internal use. I could meet an old architect, János Hartmann, who was responsible for the publications at the company, and from him I got a lot of material which I have scanned and published on the website too. For example, this from 80. from 1865. Maybe it is familiar to you, publications like this. There are a lot of industrial buildings and so on. Okay, and there are some featured investments. They made special publications. For example, we have had a stadium too, and so on. Let's go back to the homepage, to the buildings now. You can look for the buildings by categories, choose by functions, by periods, by architects, by areas, and also you can see we have here a category for demolished buildings. We have here our stadium 2 demolished, and it was very nice that this building and this looked like this. And after I published it on Facebook, there was a very big conversation because the building have had a lot of fans and it was very popular and loved among the fans. And they wrote a lot of stories, a lot of pictures, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, they became to be curious to the building itself, to the architecture itself. And when they get know that the architect János Lang was awarded with Ebel Prize, with a state prize for architecture for this building, then they became very proud. And at the end of the conversation, they considered that it was the nicest stadium in Europe as well. Perhaps the easiest way to navigate is a map, which is a simple Google map uploaded with content. You can see here the blue markers. They are not proceeded these buildings, but you can here see a photo and the basic data. And if you choose a red one, then you have here the link. I hope it works. Yes. And then you can go. It navigates you to the post. It's the train station from the 50s. You can see here the original buildings after the which was in the Second World War demolished. Here you can see the model, the site plan model, and then the building itself. The interior is a very clear architecture, and maybe from the outside you cannot think that this is in it. And at the end of the post, I have a big gallery of photos. So it's a magnificent opportunity to meet personally with the architects who have made these works. It is still available for us, even for a little while anyway. I met several times with at the University of Győr with Gábor Winkler, who died a few months ago, and with other co-workers of the State Planning Institutes of Győr. They helped me to answer a lot of questions and brought me and the readers too closer to the buildings and to the architecture of this era. Let me show you in this context one more building. The National Theatre of Győr, a huge and very interesting buildings. A lot of materials you can reach here, and pictures from the original, from the first planning or design competition from the 30s, and versions for the plan from the 60s. There is a big housing estate behind it. This is the planning site. Yes. And a lot of variations until the finally building was built. And why I show it you, that there is a lot of so the description is completed with quotes from the conversation with one of the designers, János Hartmann, and I got from him a lot of technical and personal informations and a lot of documents, and this is what made this post so rich. Something about the future. About 50 buildings await processing now from Győr, and I have a lot of interviews with the architects of these periods, and my intention is that these appears on the website shortly. I think it's also be important to write briefly from the significant architects too. And naturally, there is the question of the operation of the upkeep and upgrade of the website too. The project is still a private initiative. What you can see here is almost entirely built with free tools, using with a WordPress blog engine, Google Maps, and promoting with Facebook. It takes a lot of time, however. And as I mentioned, many materials are still waiting for publication as of now. Unfortunately, the city of Győr is not open for the project, unlike the university Faculty of Architecture in Győr and the local Chamber of Architects. And finally, let me shortly introduce you one or two other results of the project. The first one is that little map which presents the 20th century architecture of Győr. A few years ago, the university's Faculty of Architecture involved in an international project called Atrium. The theme was the architecture of the recent past in Central Europe, and we managed, among other things, within the framework of the project to publish this small map. I brought some copies, feel free to take it. And it is a great thing too that the topic is also popular among the students at the university in Győr. As far as I know, they use the website for their work. And for example, a student has chosen the post-war architecture of schools in Győr as the topic of his bachelor thesis. He processed among 10 buildings, which will be soon published on the website. And finally, let me mention one more important result. We started a cooperation 2 years ago with the Regional Chamber of Architects. The aim of the work is to make exhibitions about the architecture of the 20th century of the county, of the region. And last year we already created an exhibition about church architecture. We have presented it in Győr, in the City Museum, and also in Budapest, in the Fuga, and in Debrecen. Some pictures about Topa. All right. Some pictures in Győr. János Golda opened the exhibition, and this is the opening ceremony in the Fuga in Budapest. So that's all. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your attention.